Welcome back to the Weekly Driver podcast. My name is James Rea. I'm an automotive columnist for Bay Area News Group, and I publish the website TheWeeklyDriver.com. My colleague and co-host is Bruce Aldridge, and today we have on Chad Hooker, who is the co-chair of a wonderful automotive show that we've been to a few times, Pacific Coast Dream Machines. It's coming up in a few weeks. Chad, welcome to our podcast. How are you this morning?
I'm fine, thanks.
Chad, if you would give us an overview, maybe a little bit of a background of the show. I know it, you know it, but for our audience, could you tell us briefly how the show started and the charity part of it and its legacy?
Okay, well, Dream Machines takes place at the Half Moon Bay Airport, and this was our 29th year. So because we're at an airport, it's both a car show and also an airplane show. The venue opens up to a great many things which we can discuss. As I say, 29th year, the event was started by a local businessman, and his name is Bob Stan.
Yes.
He's a community guy, and he just did a great job of driving this thing forward. He just had this tireless enthusiasm for making it go, and he was a man who was willing to and able to think big. You know, he knew that it was going to be quite a project to build an event of this capacity and size, but to build a real serious fundraiser, that's what it takes, and he just stepped up. So that started in 1990, and by about 94, it was in the black, and that's been great. The beneficiary is the Coastside Adult Day Health Center. This is a organization in Half Moon Bay that provides day health services to an aging population of adults, many of whom helped build this community, and the concept is for them to be able to age in place. So this provides day services for them. We have handicap-assisted transportation that gets them to the center, and there's a hot lunch and a lot of socialization activities.
Very good. Yeah, that's a good nuts and bolts story. Let's get to the fun stuff. It's an amazing show. I mean, I don't know that anything would be like it. Well, like you say, they combine aircraft with all your automotive stuff. They got little sideshows going on. They got music. They got food. What else do they have? Give us a roundup.
Well, try to imagine all that on the field and in the air all at once. You got Mustang clubs and Corvettes and antique cars. We have steam engines. This is the Steam and Gas Society, early days gas engine and tractor association, and also the from Willits, the Roots of Motive Power, bring these gigantic steam engines and log yarders and such. So we've got that stuff going on, and then the vintage warbirds are really something. P-51s, T-6s. This year we've got a C-47 there. There are some Yak Russian fighters. The C-47 will have parachute jumpers hopping out of the plane. There's Tractor Society that drives these amazing hand-built tractors there. We have a line of antique police cars. There's a group here on the peninsula that collect these old police cars, and they marshal all their forces at an adjacent grade school, and then come into the event sometime between 9 and 10 in the morning with lights and sirens blazing, and it looks like something out of an old Dragnet movie. It's really great to see. The world record streamliners are there. You're talking about the Ack Attack and other motorcycle from Salt Flats. We've got dragsters, serious machines, thousands of horsepower. These are 0 to several hundred miles an hour, a quarter mile. Some of those things are there when they start their engines.
Yes. Yeah, that's what they call the Crackle Fest, and they do that about 3 times on the weekend.
Well, yes, there is.
Day.
The guys with the dragsters seem to start them now and then at someone's request, but the Cackle Fest is at 10, and again at noon, and again at 2. And the Cackle Fest is where people all over the field can start their engines. And, you could look at a supercharged big block V8 stuffed into a small old car and think, man, that's a lot of juice. But then when you hear that thing run, that's something else. And that's a bit of what will be going on with the Cackle Fest. You get a lot of engines from coming at once. It's a lot.
Oh yeah, the sound is over the top. It's great.
Yes, it's great.
That's a good point. Is that a lot of the stuff that's out there? They run it. An old steam engine or something from the logging industry back in. Way back in the 20s or 30s, steam-powered stuff. They run it. The like you said, some of the more modern muscle cars, and they run those things out there, and you get to see them drive around, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. There's very little stuff that gets brought in there on a trailer, and the few things that do are sometimes things like dragsters, and they run too. There's not much stuff that shows up at Green Machines. It doesn't either come under its own power. It can be operated when it's there. It's not some static display of broken down equipment that's not much fun to look at. This stuff is pretty cool.
I think that how you've described it gives me a little bit of a memory of seeing cars, and I think you have to have a little, not you have to have, but I've always had a little bit of fun in a sense of humor, if you will, because there's somebody that might have a beat-up old van, and they've paid their whatever the entry thing is, I've forgotten now, and they're just as proud of that beat-up old Chevy Econoline van or a vintage VW or some other car that you would never really think that much about, but they really get a kick out of their cars, and they're happy to talk about them, and it's just so much all over the map. It's almost hard to take it in one day, but it's a great 6 or 7 hours out there from just every possible anything that has an engine is what you see. It's great.
Yeah, it is amazing, some of the stuff you see. Last year we had this Batmobile there that I don't even know where this thing came from, but it must have been built for a movie, and it really turned some people's heads. It looked to me like it might have been built on a Corvette chassis, but it was too hard to tell. But it was remarkable to see, and the thing literally drove in there. It was 2 inches of clearance above the pavement. Somebody drove it there. And you mentioned old cars that look like maybe they're a little bit hammered. I remember seeing a 51 Buick there that had been salvaged from out in the desert where the paint had been pitted by a sandstorm. And the guy had not repainted this thing. He put new glass in it, and then you open the hood, and the whole Buick frame and body was there, but it had Corvette gizzards in it.
Oh, my.
And so it was a Corvette with this heavy iron body of nearly 50 ton out of it. It was something to see. Try a motorcycle with a sidecar that's been built with the Kawasaki engine that's been replaced with a fiberglass cowling that looks like a Kawasaki engine, but in the sidecar is a 300 horse turbocharged Mazda engine.
Oh, my.
You also have freestyle motocross jumping 2 or 3 times, which I think is great because you're really close, and those guys are good. And then you also have, what is that crazy Una motorcycle racing? That's the craziest darn thing I've ever seen. It's got one wheel.
Yeah, it's a one-wheel motorcycle. So basically what you're talking about here is taking a motorcycle and pull the front wheel off it, put some skis there, and build a bunch of framework off the back of it that allows you to keep it right side up. And the drivers of these things sort of lie stomach and chest on what was the motorcycle seat and light them off. And the idea is to get the skis off the ground, and you see who goes the farthest, the fastest without touching down in front. So they're 100-foot and 100-yard drag races, and these things light it up. Some of them are quite powerful motorcycles that have been renovated into these unibikes, and it's every bit of crazy. These guys. I mean, you watch them go, and you just say, it's probably not for me, but there's something to see. You mentioned the motocross. Those guys are also bringing this year a series of quad racers, and I'm taking these to be four-wheel drive, open road sort of quads, and they're going to have heats where they drive around the inside track there and do a competition. I've been told that it's relatively competitive, and there's a certain amount of that sort of Ben-Hur bumping the axles, trying to knock the other guy off.
That'll be fun. Yeah,
great.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, this should be wild to come, right? And that's in the same arena where we've got the flying motorcycles and also the unibikes. So there's some activity there in the middle of the event. It's a great deal of fun to see. It's just to the west of the food court and where the music is.
You mentioned the food court. It reminded me of another area of this, is that with the vendors that are there and the parking, which is very well organized, and it's a difficult place to get in and out of, you might think, but with the volunteers, you pay to park, but there's a very nice way of parking the cars in great rows, and you're pretty close to where the activity is. So anybody that's thinking about going down there, as a heads up, it doesn't get that backlogged. If I remember, there's just a good flow of a parking attendants, and you're pretty close to your car. You can go back to your car if you've got something in your car. Not to dissuade anybody from buying something at the vendors, but you have access to your own vehicles throughout the day. If you need sunscreen or more water or whatever it is, it's a beautiful, nice enclosed area, and very safe.
And mowed weeds. So you
and
don't
mowed
get your
weeds.
car,
That's right.
You're not blowing dirt.
That's right.
That's right. A lot of mowing and rolling involved. This year with all this rain, you've got I think we're going to have some raking involved before the event as well. We'll mow it all down, but there's a lot of stuff up there. Yeah, you're correct. Once you're inside the airfield perimeter fence and pay your admission fee, that fee includes parking.
Chad, you mentioned that you've been involved in your capacity, the current capacity, for 10 years. Are you involved in the show since its debut? And I'm assuming from at least many years. Has there been a trend that you can pinpoint? Did you have more muscle cars 15 years ago, or more dragsters or supercars, or has there been trends that you could tell us about through the years, if there has been?
Well, I have been with the show from the very beginning, from the very first year, and for about more than 10 years, I was responsible for parking spectator vehicles. So I spent an awful lot of the day running around in the field with my hair on fire.
Yes.
Didn't have an awful lot of opportunity to walk and look at the show. But what I would describe as a trend, I think, is it's sort of two things: a refinement of the quality of display vehicles and vendors and aircraft that show up. The people who come to this event tend to come back. And people who've been to this event realize what it is and what they can bring there, what the quality and character of kind of the sorts of things that people want to see. And over the years, that stuff has gotten better and better. Yeah,
that's certainly been fun for us. We did go one year. It was overcast and windy, but I think we've been two other times where it's exactly as you described. And I don't know if I'm mixing years, but might have been last year or the year before, we talked to two young guys who had their first car, and they were redoing their first car, and maybe a half an hour before or a half an hour later, this might be a little controversial, I don't know, we went and I was a little bit intimidated, but there were some guys there from the Hells Angels. And they weren't too talkative. I'm not quite sure if I remember what they were up to, but the juxtaposition.
They had a booth. They were selling merchandise.
They were selling merchandise, that's right. But I chuckled all the way home because I was talking to two 15-year-old kids, and then I was talking to some guys who were, let's just say they weren't 15-year-old kids.
Yeah.
So I guess that shows just the diversity of the show. It's so you turn one way and you got one kind of vehicle, you turn the other and you never know. But by and large, everybody's there with their vehicle, and you can go right up and introduce yourself, and it's now become a cliche, but they're so passionate about what they have. The conversations are fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you kind of bring that full circle back to the name of the event, Dream Machines, I mean, people bring stuff there where it's like, you know what? I think this is what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to take this and I'm going to build it into that, and I'm going to do this. And they do. And then they show up with it, and it's really remarkable. I remember one year I saw a car that looked like, I would say, late 40s, maybe early 50s vintage Merc. And this thing, the suspension had been modified so the back bumper was about a half-inch off the pavement, and had this absolutely beautiful paint job that changed color from green to copper as you walked over to the car.
Yes.
And there was a guy standing there covered from head to foot in tats and giving me this hard look like, hey, man, you look at my car. And I started talking to him. And he opened the trunk, and the trunk was lined with this red velvet material. And on a small shelf right behind the back seat was, are you sitting down in an aquarium with fish in it?
Oh my gosh. The Weekly Driver podcast gets support from AmericanTrucks.com. Visit www.americantrucks.com. A couple of years ago, there were guys there, and I think there were 2 vehicles, and they reminded me that they should have been in like Mad Max movies. They were futuristic looking, and it was all aluminum or brushed steel exterior, and they were thousands of horsepower, and I forgot what those. They
were big Allison airplane motors in them. And
yes, and there was a
based on
huge
big
crowd
rig
around
chassis.
that. And the guy did start it up. The guy did start it up, and it hurt your eardrums. But it was just the most unusual vehicles I've ever seen. They didn't have aquariums, but they were great. And every year there's something like that just takes your breath away in one way or the other.
Yeah. There's an outfit, I believe they're in South City, but I could be mistaken about that. And they go by the handle of Blastonine Brothers. They build some jumbo-sized vehicles.
That's it.
You'll see a car that's 36 feet long that's built like a 2-door, convertible coupe from the 30s with big sweeping fenders and so on. But they're just gigantic things. They put a 1952 10-cylinder fire engine motor in it, or something like that. You go, how did this happen?
Yeah, they pound all their own sheet metal too. So I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah,
and they do beautiful work. They've sold some of their project to Jay Leno, and he doesn't collect scrappy cars, and he collects the real stuff. So, and they show up each year. I think they'll be there again this year. They bring things each year, so that's fun to see.
Yes. The other thing I think that the beauty of the show, and we've covered some of this already, is that it's the antithesis of a Concorde d'Elegance. There's no trailer queens, or if any, or maybe very few, and you can touch the cars by and large, and you can talk to the people, and it's the real deal. It's not just looking at a Duesenberg that you can't get within 20 feet of, which is, kind of defeats the purpose of going to a show, is that you want to get in the mix and you want to talk to the owners and touch the cars. And this is the complete opposite of any of those stuffy shows that we've been to, and which it makes it all the more fun.
I agree. Bob did not want to have a judged show, and he did not want to have a show that was, as you put it, stuffy.
The first year, I had a chance, when I first knew about the show, I had a chance to interview Bob. And if I remember the story correctly, that for a long time he would be at the gate there, and he would shake hands with every person who brought a vehicle into the area. If I'm remembering that story correctly. He used to be a greeter.
You are remembering it correctly. He stationed himself a couple of 100 yards down the line from the entrance gate. The gate is where we let in both the display vehicles and the spectators.
Yes.
And then the display vehicles would come on down the line and get waved to turn a corner and go into a part of the field where they could be arranged for parking. And as they turned that corner, Bob was there to talk to and thank every single person for bringing their rig to show it. And it was great to see. And then he'd drift over to the guys that are bringing all the nice motorcycles and do the same thing with them. And
spur of the moment, let's say you're looking for something to do on that day, and you drive your family down or yourself down or with a couple of buddies, whatever it is. I forgot. Is it $20 to get in?
I think it's $25 if you show up spontaneously, and if you buy tickets on Eventbrite, I believe it's $20.
That's right. That's got to be the best way to spend $25 I can think of if you're into. If you're a car enthusiast or an engine enthusiast, I should say, it's a great deal for a long show and a long day, and it's fantastic.
It's a great area to drive in too. If you just want to go for a long drive that day and have that as a destination. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. Let me run through that a little more clearly. The spectator admission is $25 in advance on Eventbrite. You buy tickets on Eventbrite, and it's $30 at the gate. And kids 11 to 17 are $15 in advance and $20 at the gate. And that's also the rate for seniors. Kids under 10 years old are free. And there's a lot of stuff for young kids to do. We've got this water balls thing. I don't know if you've ever seen water balls. They're these clear plastic spheres, and the kid gets inside and tries to walk on water.
The first time I've ever seen them was there.
I'm not a kid, and I haven't tried it, but it sure looks like fun. And then there's the climbing walls and bungee jumping, that kind of thing, and then the rides that we mentioned as well. A lot of things for kids to do, and then there's the music and the stage.
Yes. Yeah, I think I remember the first year, the couple of guys I went with, Bruce and another friend, they had a little bit more energy, so I just sat on one of the hay bales and bought a beer and listened to music for about a half an hour, and it was that would be worth the admission right there if you were into music. I just made my way around, and it was fantastic just to hear music and sit on a hay bale and have a beer. That was a lot of fun.
Well, absolutely, and it's a big venue. I mean, you walk and you see a lot of stuff, and then you can peel off and go over to that food booth and sit down and relax a little while, listen to some good music, and get your energy back, and get up and cover some more of the show. And it's a lot of fun to watch that. And you don't have to walk all day. There are things that are active enough. Those steam engines, there's a dynamometer there for measuring horsepower on rigs, and people put their vehicles on there. You get these guys with 500 horsepower pickup trucks, and they want to see if they're really 500 horsepower, and they strap them onto that thing, and you can watch that thing go, and and then the flyovers, the military aircraft. There's a lot to see. So you can sit and relax and kind of recharge, and then get up and do some more. It's an all-day deal if you want to make it that, and that's what we recommend. People get there early and stay late.
Well, Chad, number one, thanks for being available. Thanks for all of your knowledge today on our podcast, the Weekly Driver podcast. We want to encourage people to check out the Pacific Coast Dream Machines. It's a great day down in Half Moon Bay, and obviously it's a minimal charge, and you get to see just these extraordinary things, and obviously for the good charity that you guys have been doing for a very long time. So thanks for that, and thank you for being our guest today on the Weekly Driver podcast. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for bringing attention to our event. And again, it's on Sunday, the 28th of April. It's every year, the last Sunday in April. So please try to make it down. We'd love to see some more people there. It'd be just great. It'll be a fun day.
We'll look forward to shaking your hand when we see you down there.
If anyone needs an excuse to go down there, then get on their website and check it out. You'll get excited. You'll want to go.
Yes.
That's right. Pacific Coast Dream Machines website. It's really all the information's there as well, and you can buy tickets through Eventbrite.
Thanks again, Chad. Have a great day.
Gentlemen, thank you.
We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
James, Bruce. All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye. The Weekly Driver podcast gets support from AmericanMuscle.com, your late model Mustang and F-150 authority, bringing you the hottest products and top-notch customer service for over a decade. No one makes it easier to modify your ride. Visit AmericanMuscle.com today